Good evening. My name is John Schmid, and welcome to today's seminar on small group communication, and just the training that's involved with how to do that effectively, as well as just looking at what small group communication is and how to use it effectively in your workplace, in your day-to-day life, and just how to overall become a more effective communicator as a whole. I want to start by just kind of giving a roadmap for where this training session is going to be headed and what we're going to be covering. I'm going to start with a brief introduction and overview, as well as listing the objective of what we're essentially trying to accomplish here today with this training session. I'm going to go into what small group communication is, the differences between small groups and large groups, the types of small groups that you may encounter in your life, roles within small groups, and specifically those roles within small group communication, the stages of small group development, and then we're going to finish with the types of communication utilized within small groups, as well as looking at some practice exercises you can use to get more familiar with the theories and the topics that we're going to discuss in this training session. So, with a brief introduction, today we're going to be looking at small group communication, what it is, how it works, and how to utilize it effectively, as well as why it's important. We'll be exploring the different roles, stages, and overall characteristics of small groups, as well as looking at the types of communication that's utilized within those small groups that you may encounter. So, think about the activities that you're involved in your life. Think about the things that you do on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. Think about the people that you see, how they interact with you, what that looks like. Think about the different groups that you may be involved in, the ones specifically labeled small groups, the ones that are more casual small groups. Are they religious groups, work groups, friend groups, family connections? We may be in more small groups than we initially realize. When I say the word small groups, you may not think about that, group of friends at work that eats lunch every day together, but that's a small group. And just because it's not formally labeled a small group, it is. It has all the makeups of one. You may not think about that project that you're assigned to work on at work with the 3 people that sit next to you, but that's a small group. The objective of today's training session is for all participants by the end of this to be able to explain and understand the different roles and stages of small groups and their development, as well as to be able to give at least one example of the type of communication that can be effectively utilized within small group communication. So, as we're getting started, I want to start off with a good, solid definition. I believe that every training session, every time that you learn something, you need to start with a good definition of what you're learning and how it applies. So, the definition for small group tonight is a small group is a gathering of 3 or more individuals, but consisting of no more than 50 individuals, coming together for a common goal. And if you think about it, anytime that you are in a gathering of 3 to 50 people, you can often see that there's a common goal. Very rarely are you just coming together on happenstance. Maybe if you're passing someone in the aisle at the grocery store, that's a happenstance gathering. But if you're coming together with those people, whether it's eating lunch, whether it's discussing something at work, having dinner with friends, there's a common goal there, whether it's relationship building. We'll get into more later what those goals are, but be thinking about what the different groups you're in, what those goals are that you see. Communicating in small groups is usually done just within the small groups. Very rarely do you have communication between 2 or more small groups, because usually these groups operate as independent cells amongst themselves. You usually have them operating kind of independently from others, and that's kind of the best benefit given by small groups. In a lot of large group settings, everybody feels like they're overwhelmed by the entirety of everybody being there, but in small groups, it feels very close-knit, it feels very comforting, very, very controlled. Take some time and think about the groups that you're in, like I asked you to earlier. It could be your friends, your coworkers, your family. Are these groups large or small? What's the difference in large and small groups? Why is it important to know the difference? We often feel more comfortable, as I was saying earlier, with small groups. A lot of people don't like speaking in front of a lot of people. A lot of people enjoy the close-knit relationships that come with having a smaller group of friends or a smaller family. We often see in life that we form closer bonds with a smaller number of individuals, and it's these closer bonds that I believe will help small groups and be more efficient ways to get work done if small group communication is utilized effectively. As we look at the differences between small and large groups, the major difference obviously is numbers. Small groups, as I said earlier, are 3 to 50 individuals, and large groups are anything over 50. Another major difference, however, is how you communicate within these groups. Large groups, there's a lot of lecturing, there's more big picture communication, a lot of talking down or delegating or things along that nature. But in a small group, it's very interpersonal, it's very close-knit communication. You know the person sitting across from you. You don't feel like they're just speaking to the masses, you feel connected. And that's the main difference with small group communication. Another difference is the roles and responsibilities are different in type of groups. In large groups, you feel lost. You feel like you don't really have a true identity. But in small groups, everyone has a role, everyone has a goal, everyone has an assignment, something they want to complete, they want to accomplish. And that identity, that role, that common goal is essential to the success of the small group. The most effective small groups are the ones where the members feel some sort of ownership or accomplishment over the work and the group itself. The synergy within the group is also important. And synergy is one of those tricky words. People hear it a lot, but don't have a good grasp of what it means. But it really just means how well you work together. You want a group of individuals that knows their roles, that knows their place, and can work together to make the sum of the parts, or to make the whole greater than the sum of the parts. Because you have all these people that may have these skills, but when they come together, they can create and do more than they ever could by themselves. Think about it this way. An effective small group is going to work like a machine. It's going to be effective, and it's going to be efficient. And if you see 4 tires and an engine all disassembled, you may not see a car. But when it's all put together, it becomes something that we rely on daily, and that's how small groups work. There are different types of small groups. What do you think are some of the most common characteristics across all the different types of small groups? Small groups share a sense of interdependence and identity. So interdependence and common identity. Small groups are also assembled in order to meet an instrumental need. Small groups very rarely are assembled by chance. Usually small groups are assembled because there's a need. There's a need for the group to accomplish something, whether it's an assignment at work, whether it's to deepen the relationship, whatever it is, the group meets because they have a need to meet. Different types of small groups that occur. You have your task-oriented group, your relationship-oriented group, and your primary and secondary groups. Task-oriented groups are your groups that are assigned for a specific reason. They have a clear and understood goal or set of goals, and they are judged on the quality of the final product. Think work small groups. Relationship-oriented groups are groups where relationship building and maintaining relationships is the priority. They don't have a common goal of a task. Rather, relationships are the goal. Interactions are focused on, and they are the well-being of the group. The group is only as strong as the interactions and the relationships are between the members. And relationship-oriented small groups are often put together voluntarily. Task-oriented groups are often forced to come together. Relationship-oriented groups are the ones that you'll see develop organically. Lastly, you have primary and secondary groups. Primary groups are groups of people that are your close friends or your family, people that you see regularly and you have a very strong connection with the members. Secondary groups are people that you may only see once or twice a year. They're people that you meet with, they're your board of directors or someone that you see just for reviews, or some people that you don't get to spend a lot of time face to face. Another common type of group that we'll get into at a different point is teams. Teams are a small group that's characterized by an extremely loyal dedication to the team or to the task. If you think about sports teams, think about the fans, that's a kind of team. They find their unity and their loyalty to that organization. There are lots of roles within small groups. Do you think groups are more or less effective when they have clearly defined roles? Obviously, they're more effective. Obviously, when the roles are clearly defined, when everybody has a job, everything is more efficient and working more effectively. There are 3 different types of roles, just like there were 3 different types of groups. You have task roles, maintenance roles, and disruptive roles. Task roles. These are the ones where there's a specific goal for that member to accomplish. Think leader. They help define and achieve the goals for the group. Initiator. They offer ideas and suggestions. Secretary or recorder. They keep track of the meetings and what is being discussed within the group. Your maintenance roles. You have supporter. They provide emotional warmth and acceptance within the group, make people feel welcome and supported. Your harmonizer. They promote group peace. They maybe work as a mediator. None of these roles are exclusive. You can't just be one of them. You can't just be one task role, one maintenance role. People flow between these. People have different positions that they take in different groups, and it's important to realize that you can be different. You can fulfill the role of different task roles and different maintenance roles. You're not limited to just one. Disruptive roles are a negative type of role. No, you don't want to have disruptive roles in your group. These are like the clown or the isolator, people who distance themselves or work to destroy the well-being of the group. You'd want to cut disruptive roles out of your group. Remember, not all roles are good. When it comes to small groups develop in what is known as the 5-stage process. There are 5 stages to the development and the procedures of small groups. These stages go from the very first time the group is assembled till well past the final meeting. These stages are forming, the stage where the group is formed and first comes together. Storming, it's a twofold stage. One, where the group works out kinks and how it will operate, and two, where they brainstorm ideas to get the goal accomplished for the group. 3 is norming. The group falls into rhythms and begins to work as a pattern and work efficiently. Things normalize. 4 is performing. The group is working at its highest output, highest level of efficiency, and they are doing the most, the quickest. The last stage is adjourning. In the adjourning stage, the group has accomplished their goal and is beginning to disband. They may look back and do progress reports or post-analysis, things that will look at how effective their time in the group was, but this is after the goal has been accomplished. Moving forward, we have the types of communication that you'll see within small groups. It's important to remember that the primary type of communication seen within small groups is interpersonal communication. You'll see this communication between individuals in the group, and that's what's important to remember. This makes sense given that most of the work done within small groups is done within individuals. You don't see this sort of like chain of command thing. It's much more done on an interdependent scale where people rely on each other to get things accomplished, so that communication, those lanes of communication, have to be open and free-flowing. There are some other types of communication that can be used in small groups though. Lecturing can be used, nonverbal communication. As we've seen with all the issues with COVID-19, virtual communication can be used. Polls and surveys can be used. If the group is larger than 10 people, you can use kind of an anonymous survey to get a feel for the group, as well as gestures, people making, body language gestures to insinuate things or show approval or disapproval in certain things the group is doing. While communicating with a small group is important, it is most important to utilize your interpersonal communication and your relationship building skills in order to maintain the well-being of the group. So, those are the things that I wanted to discuss in the training session. Now I encourage you at your tables to sit down and work with people over some of these practice exercises. First one is to write a list of different small groups that you are in and what you think your role is. There's a list of roles in your packet if you're confused. 2 is to assume that you and the other people at your table are working in a small group for work. Come up with a product idea and figure out who would be what role if y'all were really developing that product. And 3 is think about the different small groups that you've observed in your life. Are there any behaviors that you saw in those groups that you wish you didn't see? Why or why not? As we move forward, as you work on these practice exercises, I'll be working my way around and coming to you and answering any questions I can. But I want you to think, after hearing this presentation, I hope you've gained an understanding of what small groups are, how communication can be used effectively within them, and what they genuinely look like in our day-to-day life. I hope that you now feel equipped to take this information out into the world and apply it to wherever and whatever small groups you may be in. Thank you for your time.